All right, I just want to also brief you on what you're seeing right now. Samburu Governor Moses Kasaine has been arrested by EACC after DPP approved his prosecution of a county corruption scandal. That is what we have currently as a breaking news this morning. Samburu Governor Moses Kasaine has been arrested by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission after DPP approved his prosecution of a county corruption scandal. And of course, we shall give you details of this much later in the course of the program. But for now, we want also to drill deeper and get to discuss. You want to comment on this? Especially on corruption? Right. Let's hear from Aaron Cheriot.
You know, this is how now a proper fight against corruption should work. Where, you know, the gentleman went to EACC, he recorded his statement. I think he answered the allegations that was before them. The figures then were huge figures that were being quoted, but I've just seen the brief from DPP, is that based on what was presented to him by EACC, what he thinks is a watertight case, I think is what they're calling a fuel scam of 84 million Kenya shillings. You know, you remember when this matter first came, there were huge amount of money that were being quoted, as is typical with our press. Anyway, that one is a debate for another day. But it just goes on to strengthen the point that some of us have been raising on this panel for such a long time, that DPP oversights the work of DCI and EACC. Oversight to the extent that they first prepare a file, DCI or EACC, and say, we think Dibal should be charged by the state because of the following, and he forwards to DPP. DPP has a team that goes through the material evidence that is being presented before him, before he either okays or rejects the request to charge you. And therefore, when you have this animal that you are being told is called a multi-agency team, where AG, who signs the contract, sits there, DPP, who is supposed to oversight the work of DCI, sits together with the DCI and EACC on it, something is lost. And that is why I agree, because I watched Senator James Orengo in court last week over this issue of DCJ, Philomena Mwilu, on the shock and astonishment he got when the whole saga was unfolding, that DPP and DCI showed up at the Supreme Court without witness statements and wanted to charge. You know, these are very basic and fundamental principles of how you operate. You know, it just tells you how incompetent this exercise is. Because when you show up at Supreme Court and you want to charge Philomena Mwilu and you haven't even taken a witness statement from her, it just tells you how the whole exercise is shrouded in mystery and is being directed from certain interested quarters. And therefore, the reason why I agree with this one is because due process has been followed. That is what many of us have been asking. We are not asking for any favor from DCI or from EACC. We are just saying, follow the law. And this is what has happened in this Samburu Governor issue. So
what would you say also of Ndidi Nyoro, the Kiharu Member of Parliament, who is seeking to limit the Director of Public Prosecutions and Director of Criminal Investigations in handling corruption cases? With that particular legislation, you know, this time they think that, yeah, these particular offices are being, you know, puppeteered by the executive.
Yes, you know, I haven't read the bill, but I think if it is what I suspect it to be, I agree with him. You remember I've quoted before you Article 79 of our Constitution. There was good sense and good reason why, as a country, we felt that the fight against corruption should be spearheaded by an independent body. And that is why, as we speak even today, and it's a matter I've had, because I've had opportunity to look at some of the businesses that is before the House in the coming week. And perhaps Mithika should be knowing this better because he's a member of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. Is this battle for supremacy between EACC and DCI, where certain files that were previously before EACC, all of a sudden, they have been shifted to DCI, and that is where they're being handled. Until we are able to answer this question as to what was the wisdom that the drafters of our Constitution and Kenyans agreed with them, that we need to have an independently oversighted body that is not under the direction of anyone handling matters on corruption, we will not be able to win this war. Otherwise, so long as it is with someone like DCI,
thank you,
who is an errand boy for someone, you will never be able to find the truth.
So
which is
you
unfortunate.
still hold the view that he's an errand boy of someone?
Yes, of course he is.
All right, let's hear from Boni Khalwale. Did you comment about Samburu?
Yes. Yeah, before I comment that, I want to disagree with my brother Cheriot. Under the Constitution, there is no clause that suggests in any way that the DCI is an errand boy of anybody. But then let me come to the issue of the governor. The governor has been arrested. This does not mean that it's a confirmation of guilt. However, I want to ask the government, and especially His Excellency, to now move ahead of events. Now that the DCI and the DPP appear to be making progress in their work, where is their work going to end? The good industry from these two officers is going to come to naught unless the corruption in the judiciary is fixed. There are far too many allegations of corrupt judges. Worst of all is that the majority of the judges at the Supreme Court are suspected to be corrupt. I think Parliament should help the President to see how we can reconstitute the Supreme Court afresh. Some of the allegations we can only wait and see whether it is true that our Supreme Court judges are corrupt. But others, it is just common sense. Like the governor of Wajir, the guy didn't have a degree.
Yes.
And the Constitution requires that a judge, a deputy, not a judge, a governor and a deputy governor must have a degree. So if the guy didn't have a degree, how on earth did they not overturn his election? So there's something inherently wrong with the Supreme Court. We like Maraga very much. My brother Smoking is there. We were with him at the university. But we're just not happy with the results that are coming from there.
So the corruption is running the whole gamut, you know, from the judiciary to government agencies. Let's say from Jacomi Dio.
Dibal, I think Boni has said it all, but I'm surprised Boni is contradicting his boss.
Which boss?
Cheriot. Cheriot talks against the DPP. Boni is supposed to clap. Boni is supposed to clap, but that's with a light touch. But I think we have our work cut out for us. Beginning with cleaning up the judiciary. I said here many times that we will not win the war against corruption if we do not clean the agencies that are tasked with the whole task of fighting corruption, beginning with the judiciary, parliament, and the police. Once you deal with politicians, which I think we are dealing with effectively, that's why there's so much noise, because the leaders of corruption have always been asked the politicians. We give the instructions and use the system. Now we need to move to the judiciary. And I am so happy that the system is calling the judges for who they are. I'm happy what Boni has said. It is not to say all judges are bad, but when the law says you must have a degree, if you don't have a degree, how else can a conscious judge? Judiciary must have conscience. It is killing our future. It's killing our imaginations of a good Kenya in years to come, when a judge can sit, for example, and say, allow sugar on a technicality which is laced with mercury. You know,
yes.
we must deal with these issues. However, Debal, I think the MP is wrong. The MP who is trying to clip the powers of DPP is wrong. The DPP needs more powers than he has. And I think what the institution which is out of place is the one called EACC. We have had EACC since the days of Moi. They have not had an effect. And in fact, the composition of that body, you know, I remember we talked about this thing here a few weeks ago. And if you go to the Constitution, it says to talk, the EACC is to police issues to do with Chapter 6. That is all their work is. But general criminality and corruption is the work of DPP and the DCI. They actually should work under them. Whatever the police, that's why we have consistently denied EACC prosecutorial powers. Dibal, I want to end by saying, because we are commenting about the Samburu Governor, the young man who thought public money is his money. Beginning today, and I saw the DPP talk about it a while back, these arrested governors must step aside. You know, this guy, you will go and charge him in court, he is going to go back to Samburu and steal more.
To pay the judges.
To pay the judges. So this guy must not have access to his office. And you know, I agree with the president when he said, if the system fails, the people must take matters into their own hands. This issue of the governors being charged and remaining in office is one that Kenyans must rebel against. Because I think there is more corruption in county government than, I mean, as much as there is in the national government.
All right. And let's hear from Kimani Matangi before I read some or an excerpt of the press statement that is coming from the EACC right now, briefly.
Yes, Dibal, on that issue of the Samburu Governor, the commentary there, my take is that, as earlier stated, the process of finding out whether he is guilty or not guilty has just started. And that's why we have our laws. That's why we have that process and structure in that process. So that now, those charges, once confirmed by the DPP, means that the court will then take and peek in detail into what has been alleged and see, is the man guilty or is he innocent? And of course, we also must remind our viewers that our law states clearly that every man, every woman in this land and our constitution is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty in the court process. And because some of my colleagues have lauded, and especially Cherio, that our law should start being followed to its truthfulness and its procedure. Let that be done. Now, secondly, is on this question that has been addressed here by my brother Jacoyo on that, and actually mentioned earlier by Bonnie, on the degree question in that ruling by the Supreme Court. You know, you get to realize, probably when the reasoning comes out, that when they say the law is a mass, they mean many things. You know, for example, you're going to hear very interesting arguments about this degree. The arguments would be, Medikal Inturi is a new entrant into this field. He probably will tell us that they would be asking maybe if it is required that you have a degree for you to be elected as a governor. What is the function? What is the intent? What does the degree facilitate you to do to be a governor? And they will be saying probably the same argument you'd be arguing, that if you're asked to make sugar, to make tea sweet, and so you add sugar, if you added a sweetener other than sugar, would you be having the same idea? I'm just saying that the gymnastics of the interpretation of law are huge and wide, you know, for the understanding of us. And of course, I was one of those who found it very amusing, you know, to find that judgment saying that the governor acted and behaved in a manner likely to suggest that he's a degree holder. I mean, to that extent. But what I'm saying is that, of course, that's how the law reasons. I don't want to get into those details because that's not the issue. Lastly, Bal, allow me to comment on this issue of Dindi Nyoro and the revision of law that he seeks. And probably the question I would be asking is, what happens then when a time comes and the people sitting in EACC are not either as agreeable, congruent, acceptable, reasonable, yes, as one would expect, and then you have watered down the other institutions, and then you have an EACC that at that time would be having rogue individuals, and yet the other institutions are not what they are intended to be. And lastly, let's also be clear that constitutional bodies, independent bodies are enshrined in our constitution with their functions and powers.
Thank you.
I think it is important to have that balance. We shouldn't interfere. What we should persist on is, can the process be above board?
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Mythical Inturi finally on this particular story of Samburu.
Ndipal, I want it very clear, and I want to say that corruption, plunder of public funds, is a vice that we must all fight. And I would want to say that this can only or should only be done within our constitutional and legal framework. There is no doubt about it. That is what we should do if we do not want to fall into the suspicion by those people that are against it, or to be taken to be politicizing the whole thing. But let me say this, because somebody has touched on the judiciary and the office of the DPP together with the proposed legislation. It is clear that it cannot just be understood by everyone, and it should not be really an issue that should really bother us so much if we really want to move this country forward. Because when we talk about wrong decisions having been made by the courts, it is not right for us to condemn the courts, because we have a legal mechanism and framework to challenge decisions that are made by the courts, save for the decisions of the Supreme Court, which can only be reviewed by themselves. And I would want to say that when there is a clear legal provision that, for example, if you want to be run as governor, you must have a loan, you must have a degree, then whichever way you want to look at it, you will not change that legal position. It is irrebuttable. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I would ask that let us as Kenyans be bold enough to strengthen institutions, because if we do strengthen institutions and things start flow according to the laid down legal framework, then we'll have every reason to challenge. And currently, the way the system is, if somebody has a problem with the judicial service, with the judges, the Judicial Service Commission is there. Let's go there and address that issue. If one judge has erred, it is not the own judicial system or the own judiciary that is corrupt. We are individuals. Criminal responsibility is individual. That's how we need to look at it. And finally, because you've raised this issue of the amendment to the law,
yes,
in regard to what the governor of Samburu is facing this morning. I am the deputy of the Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee of the Senate. And it is just last week when the multi-agency task force on corruption appeared before my committee. And this committee, the members of this task force is the Attorney General, is the DCI, is the EACC, is the DPP, and
asset recovery.
Yes, and yeah, exactly. So all these people came, and they are under a raft of laws that they would want us to look into and make amendments for us to give them power and more strength to fight corruption. The Senate, we did not have a problem in trying to ensure that corruption is fought. But one question that I raised in that particular meeting, and the answer will bear me out, is because there was an amendment to Section 62(1) of the ASECA Act. And the proposal they are making is in line with what Jakoyo is asking, that anybody that has as executive authority, once charged, then should step aside. The question I raised then, because you know there's a legal proposal coming from government. It asks them whether there has been change of heart and change of mind from the executive. And why I did that, because in 2019, in 2015, Jakoyo, you were in Parliament. I think was in the Senate. The Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill of 2015, I moved an amendment to the same section section 62(1) to provide for people with executive authority to step aside once charged in court. It is me who did it. I have the copy of the answer. I pushed and rallied the parliament to pass the same law. The same law was passed, it was taken for assent. It was not assented to.
It was rejected.
It was rejected and returned back to parliament by way of a memorandum. And we were not able to marshal enough members to overrule the proposal by the president. That we did in 2015. And in 2019 today,
You see it again.
it's now coming again. It is under debate. We will be looking at it. So what I am saying is that this is what you do, and when presented with similar facts, you start to wondering that, well, could it have been that time anybody thought that you are targeting an individual or somebody else, and now that the road is
All right,
clear.
so you think actually this particular turn of events with this particular proposal you had, it's politically motivated?
No, what I'm
Is that-
saying,
yeah.
this is what I saw in 2015.
Yes.
And because that particular time, what we are providing for, that time was for governors that will have been charged to leave office. And actually, if you read the memorandum, what the memorandum said was that the probability of misuse of that particular law was so high because you would be sacking governors just like in that one was was uncomfortable with the performance of the work.
But I agree with Mithika and thank him to have been having proper foresight. That was the right thing, and I was with him in that legislation, and I think most people supported it. But times are different. Who knew in 2015 nearly all governors would have audit queries? The constitution was well intentioned. The only thing in 2015 that there were the issue of the Hague trials, so that whoever would step aside would have been the top of the executive, the two gentlemen. Now we are here. I think memory is good when you don't have to deal with the past. I think what we want to do is to look forward so we can give our people a better past that even if they were to remember, we would be working in good progression. But as it were debunked, ask what Senator Wamatangi is saying. Ask yourself, why won't a governor charged in court, why is Ojamong sitting in office and the people who are charged with him suspended? What is so special about a governor? And he has executive authority. In other words, here you are giving an accused person, and we are not saying they are guilty, a chance to go and clean up their mess, because that is the would-be evidence in court. And if you give them that power, and they are all powerful, you are not doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Debal, there's just a quick thing that I want to say.
We wind up on it?
Yes. Yes. In all this war on corruption, I think it shouldn't be taken that for those of us who keep on either raising very pertinent issues on what is happening that we think you either need to streamline, that we are opposed to it. I, for the record, have said on many occasions that I'm so clear that if there is a vice that we need to do away with, it is the vice of corruption, because it continues to wipe away our resources. But when there are obvious inconsistencies in how public officers like DPP, DCI, EACC continue to wage this war, then I argue, and this is very clear to me, that that is corruption in itself that they are perpetuating. For example, I'd wish today, when you send your reporters to go and cover this story, let them ask DPP, the file of Siaya governor, that gentleman, your governor, Rasanga, arrived there years earlier than this one for Samburu Governor. This one arrived there less than 2 months ago. He has concluded and is charging that particular person. Who is this that is interfering with the office of DPP that does not allow him, he doesn't have the courage to charge Rasanga? Yet it is an obvious and a known fact that even summons were issued for him to be arrested. He is even on record having gone to a public function and say, so long as, you know, a particular person is, so long as there is a handshake, I will never be arrested. And true to his word, he has never been arrested. So when you have such glaring inconsistencies in the war on corruption, that becomes corruption itself. And that is what we are doing.
But the dynamics of investigations are very different. You cannot have a cookie cutter to all these cases.
We must say something. You know, Samburu is a tiny little county there, populated by people essentially who have historically been marginalized. I am not convinced that Moses Kasain is not a sacrificial lamb. We know of mega corruption cases by governors. He's given the example of Rasanga. We people of Kakamega, we have an open and closed file of 200 million shillings purported to have been paid to farmers of Mumia Sugar Company for payment of debts, which farmers did not receive. That was spotted by the Auditor General. Member of Public Accounts Committee of the Senate is here. They presided over it. Governor refused to come. The matter was taken to EACC. Nothing has been done. This handshake could be a problem.
Yes, it is.
Because, like in the case of Rasanga,
So it boils down to handshake again.
Rasanga is the governor of Siaya. Siaya, the home ground of one of the handshakers. The one of Kakamega is the deputy party leader of one of the handshakers. We have to ask these things.
But should we see everything through the prism of handshake right now?
I mean,
is that the bridge that everything has?
It is Rasanga who said it.
It
is Rasanga who said it.
He said it.
He said it himself.
So long as Raila Odinga is in this government, I will never be arrested.
Exactly.
Ask Jacoyo here, he was in that function.
Jacoy, can you
No,
confirm that?
may I, Jacob, before you respond to mine as
He
well.
wants to confirm, but he fears the repercussions.
Jacob, can you also respond to mine?
Yes.
Namely, that you seem to point a finger at Ojamong. In Ojamong's case, he's being suspected of having misappropriated 8 million shillings. So you are pushing for Ojamong's case, and in your home county of Siaya, concerning Rasanga, and you think in that case, you do not have to push. Are you punishing Ojamong because he no longer supports one of the handshakers?
Well, I will begin with that. First of all, I didn't think, I've known Ojamong for many years. I just used him as an example.
Yeah.
Ojamong, I remember one day, many years ago, around the year 2000, one day we had to look for a kiosk to split 20 bob because we didn't have fares home. So I know, I know when he has misplaced fortune, I also get concerned because we were around that outfit to protect public good. We suffered like that to protect public good. I am still trying to do it. I have no excuse for Rasanga, and let me confirm to you that during the campaigns of Migori Senate, Rasanga said the DPP, and the DPP has said it publicly, that he issued warrants of arrest for Rasanga, and Rasanga went dancing in public and saying he only had to make one phone call. I don't know to who, but he seems to be that connected. But the thing is, theft is theft.
Right.
If you are going to deal with a thief, whether it is Ruto or Rasanga or who, these are all thieves. There should never be anything special. However, I must say, and you will agree with me, one of the reasons I am not sitting where Cheriot and Wamatangi and Linturi are sitting is because of my persistent and consistent criticism of corruption in Siaya County.
Yes.
In fact, I was so happy last week. I would have had a drink except I'm in Lent. Last week they charged a gentleman called Marube, who was the county secretary of Siaya, who built a house of wood for 23 million shillings. And why would you want to charge Marube and not charge Rasanga? So I agree with Aaron. You know, it is the boss who called those people. And you know, the people they are charged with was a contractor allegedly associated with another governor in Coast Province.
All right. Okay. So this is what is actually the breaking news this morning regarding the Samburu governor who has been arrested by the EACC after DPP approved his prosecution of a county corruption scandal. And maybe I can just read an excerpt from the press statement from the office of DPP person to complaints received from concerned members of the public in February 2019, and the Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, commenced investigation into the financial dealings of the governor and the chief officers of Samburu County. The investigations established that the governor, Moses Kasaine, Lennon Kulal, was trading with the county government through Oryx service station for the supply of fuel since the 27th of March 2013 to date. The governor failed or neglected to disclose his interest in the said service station. It is clear that the governor engaged in a conduct that is expressly prohibited in law and in clear violation of the Constitution principles governing the conduct of public and state officers. And it goes on and on. That is just an excerpt of the press statement there from Director of Public Prosecutions. Okay, Linturi. No.
Please, a very important question. On this matter, Linturi, as Senate, Kenyans recall you sat on the matter of Ruaraka, and you mentioned CS Matiang'i. What became of that matter? Can you tell us?
No, was there a phone call?
You can just sacrifice this point.
Of course, you know, phone calls cannot be directed to me, but the truth of the matter is, you know, corruption fights, and you should never think it is that easy. That's why there is all this Shulabalu. And you know, corruptly acquired funds can be used for anything. So what I want to say in this case is that we sat on the Ruaraka land. I am the Vice Chair of Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. And we sat on that investigation. I personally was there. And we did our own findings and made a report to Parliament. And when we did the report to Senate, I remember there are very many questions were raised on procedure of getting the floor and many others. And we suspect that many other people may have been talked to. And for that matter, the report was not debated. But that, as it may, I know, and the questions we must be asking is because there are files of serious public interest. And by virtue of Article 157, Article 11 of the Constitution of Kenya, the DPP has the power bestowed upon him by the Constitution to protect public interest. Even if the Senate did not pronounce itself on this matter, because there was no adoption of a report, then, because there's an active matter that has been going on, and there was so much evidence that was tabled before the committee, which he did himself collect through his officers. He shouldn't be able to come out and tell us on this Ruaraka land, this, because number of ministers were the PA secretary was mentioned adversely in that report. The Minister of Education was mentioned adversely in that report. And since he gathered all the evidence, if there was no material evidence that would have sustained a prosecution, then he needs to come out and tell the public these were their findings, and we've now cleared the following people. And that should end there. Alternatively, take people to court.
Right, thank you.
But as far as I am concerned, until that matter is settled, either by seeing people in court and ensuring that there is a successful prosecution, then the DPP must also know one day in his life he will also answer to Kenyans, because he shouldn't be in a position to protect people. And then when I talk about protection of people, is that he bases his decisions on evidence, and even decides to charge somebody and goes through court, then he must jail him. And even doesn't jail him, because careers have been destroyed through these prosecutions, these investigations, or whatever it is, then he must always tell us and give us a solution on how to remedy the character assassination of the people that have all been taken through this process, either through truths or untruths.
Thank you. Right, we are remaining with a few minutes, but I wanted just also to comment on the upcoming State of the Nation address. This will be on Thursday. Just looking at, you know, the political tone and tenor right now, and this particular State of the Nation address, people are eagerly waiting to see what the president will have to tell the country in regard to the fight against corruption. And so much has happened. The tension, you know, has been rising as far as this is concerned. I don't know, what is your take, Jacob Midio, on this? Do you see in any way maybe a repeat of what happened, was it in 2014, where we had cabinet secretaries being mentioned that were embroiled in corruption and they were asked to step aside, and this is exactly what Mithika Linturi is talking about, people who have the executive powers. That particular proposal that you had mentioned that has come to the fore, that people should step aside, do you think in any way heads somewhat will roll, or people will step aside?
Well, I think I would hate to use the word incompetence on the president, maybe the word reluctance. You know, there's too many people around his executive setting that are just mentioned over and over. And why do you need him to go to parliament? I think he needs to act. I think the president should spare us the urge to call him names publicly. Because what is the work of a president? Half the cabinet is mentioned in graft. And he keeps saying, the president nowadays, Dibal, he does not finish a session without dwelling on the issue on the fight against corruption. Wouldn't it be good order that the president dismisses people, much like he did with the Cheza? Cheza, nobody even knew what he did. But these are, nobody knew. If you ask me why was he fired, even I've seen things that true or false, he's asking why was he fired. But what about these people mentioned in graft in terms of billions? What stops the president? Why does he need to go before parliament? The Jubilee government killed parliament. Parliament, like Mithika is lamenting here, parliament is a house of lamentations. In fact, going forward, we would have to overturn so many rulings made by the house so that we can have an orderly country. Parliament is as dead as a dodo. So the person who is leading this war, who is the president, please don't wait for Friday.
For Thursday.
For Thursday. Do something. I mean, go there looking good. I mean, I'm not his advisor, but I'm advising him that more Kenyans would be glued on if he fired half his cabinet today and gotten Kenyans who are, we cannot lack, Dibal.
Thank you.
People, Kenyans who can be half clean or clean.
Right.
Yeah.
Jerry, what do you think this will be the crunch time? As far as it's you. I've lost the sequence actually. Yeah, you've been million months.
What I will have to do now.
No, you are
next show. I'm sitting well into this.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think we'll be doing rotation now. On a serious note.
Your coat,
on a serious note.
It's because your coat is almost the color of the backdrop.
You know, Dival, can we agree on a motion right now that we are going to be rotating in the sitting order, including yourself?
Including me. I agree.
So that you become here so that, you know, sometimes we have an opportunity to have the first take or the last take. And you know, and even yourself, the issues that you raise, you can raise them from both sides. And I think that's next week. The boss has made that decision. Remember, we determined that this is a seat of power when we started. and so next week the order reverses. Now,
fantastic.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention, Dibal, that I think it's very hard for the president to make an effective State of the Nation address this Thursday without having to mention the issue of corruption. Because, you know, corruption is now the most current matter on people's lips. And if you listen to the vibrations beneath the undercurrent, when people think about the promises on the delivery of the Big Four agenda and mirror it against the ongoing war on corruption, then questions linger loudly. Is it going to be possible to deliver on the Big Four agenda when the war on corruption is at the height at which it is, and including the way we are driving it? And that's why I want to say first, I believe that it is not necessary at all for the president to come to Parliament on Thursday with a list like he did. Indeed, I would dare say that the list he came with the last time did not yield what you would call a positive, you know, impetus on on the war against corruption, because other than being taken for what it is supposed to have been as a first step, then eventually it was used as a dilutant to the intention that it had. And the questions were, why didn't you sack this one? Why did you bring this name? He better not come up with a list. As some of my colleagues here have said, people are known, names have been put across. And then we have to marry that with exact words that were used by some of my panelists, Cheruiyot and Halwale and Jakoyo here, about the procedure. When we were talking about what has happened, and which is still on our screen now, on the arraignment of the governor for Samburu. That question on, is the president going to be speaking about a vibrant, determined war on corruption that will be entrenched within the processes and procedures of law, such that when it has to happen, it will happen without questions, without finger pointing, without even assumption that it is driven by other intention. And I think for us to be able to succeed in this war, the president must have his take and say on it, this, that's the, besides all the other things that he's going to be saying.
Thank you.
And let me summarize by saying that this question of the Big Four agenda and all the gains that have been made and the ones that are intended to be made will be directly pegged